I printed my own, but he Kurt to the rescue. I would have given you mine.
Okay, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, this meeting has begun at 6:24, and we have everybody present tonight. Commissioners, myself, Kelsey, Corneffel, Kovalek, and the Township Liaison, O'Connor. So we will go to the next side, additions or deletions to the agenda.
If we can add an item under action items number 2, it would be a millage recommendation to the Township Board.
Okay, I'll need a second.
Second.
Is there any discussion on that? Okay, I'll need a vote. All in favor of adding the millage to the agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll put that, we need to put it both under the discussion and the action items, I believe, and we can do, we'll put it number 2 under the action items and number 5 on the discussion items. Okay, the next item of business is the approval of the minutes from the January meeting.
Approval of the January 4th, 2022.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's move on to the expenses. All the expenses are.
As you can see, the expenses in front of us, everything is where it should be. The end of our fiscal year is March 31st. Our new fiscal year starts April 1st. So we're starting to wrap up most of the budget here. Nothing out of the ordinary from last time. Any questions?
Yeah, I just noticed something. I should have probably noticed this before, but I look at the revenue and it shows that with 2 months left in the fiscal year, we still have almost half our budget to be used. Am I reading that right, or am I missing something? You look at the first page there. You look at your budget and you look at the balance and you look at available.
Percent of budget used, yes.
Is that right? We have all that much money?
No, I think we have a clerical error there, because we're right about where we are supposed to be. We're not going to have a great deal left over. We've been watching our budget very carefully, but
Yeah, it looks like you've managed your expenses very well. I just happened to notice that revenue thing, and I wonder whether that was a mistake or not.
I wish it was.
Well, maybe you can check on that. It just looks odd.
Yeah, at the end of the fiscal year, I mean, he's going to be really almost at the very end of his budget. So there's not going to be, if there's any excess, I would be surprised.
That's what I thought. Okay, I need a motion to receive the report.
So moved.
Support.
Favor?
Aye.
Done.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to the discussion items. Your report, Rusty, which I assume will include the fire and EMT runs.
Yes, the EMT runs are there in front of you. No signs of the calls slowing down. We're up and running and busy as usual. We are having a lot of COVID-related calls. We're taking patients in. We're taking them in for normal things that we find throughout the years, but then we're getting some word back from the hospitals that this patient tested positive for COVID. A lot of our calls as well, upon entering the residence, we're finding out there's other people in the home that have COVID. Then they're isolating or getting over it. But we had a while there where it appeared as almost 90% of our calls had some kind of COVID involvement. It was on just about every single call.
Yeah, I noticed a cardiac arrest here. Were we able to get there in time, or someone on Park Lane there on the 15th?
No. That was a female. She was relatively young, but our guys got there. It was early in the morning. We don't know how long she was down for. We did do CPR, and we went all the way to the hospital. We worked her all the way to the hospital, and we did not have any luck in reviving her. We could not bring her back. There's another cardiac arrest in here as well, I think, a little further down. And we had one early this month. The one we had this month was a success story. We did very well. We had an individual. He was 64 years old. He was at home, and he started having the classic signs of a STEMI. He said, normal day at work, nothing normal. He's just doing what he's supposed to. Was sitting down on the couch with his wife, and he said it felt like an elephant sitting on his chest. He called us. Our guys got there. They applied the life pack. They did a EKG on him, and he was having a STEMI. They sent the EKG to the hospital. We transported him priority 1 to Beaumont. The police escorted us to block the traffic. When we got to the hospital, they were waiting for us. And he got his stents, and he told the doctor told him, these guys did a beautiful job. He showed him a copy of the readout from the EKG. He said they did everything they were supposed to. He called me up this week, and he was in tears. He was very grateful. He wanted to bring us some cookies to show his gratitude, and he dropped them by yesterday. One of the guys that was on the ambulance was at the station. He was on the treadmill, and I had him come and talk to the guy, and the guy gave him a big hug. The cookies he bought for us were heart-shaped, and he understands EMS. He used to be a paramedic on Life Flight back in the early 90s, and he was in some, he did some heavy-duty transports, but he just said, you guys, everything went beautiful, everything went perfect, and I can't thank you enough. And it's what the guys live for. When they have people coming back to them and telling us how grateful they are, and we had a good save, this is what the guys work so hard for. This is what they like to hear. And it was very nice of him to come back and tell us the outcome. We don't always get the outcome. We don't always get to find out what happened. So this was, without a doubt, a happy success story. Yeah.
That's great to hear.
What's the obvious death on this?
I believe that was a woman on Church.
No, it says Matthias.
16th, Rusty.
16th, I'm sorry. Well, again, another COVID call. We had an elderly gentleman, and him and his wife, he was 91. She was in the hospital. He was diagnosed with COVID. The family couldn't get a hold of him, asked us to do a wellness check, and we stopped to check in on him. We found him deceased. He had been gone for a while, for a couple hours, and rigor mortis had already set in. And again, another COVID call, like I said earlier.
You say this cardiac arrest that you lost was a young female?
Yes, she was 43 years old. It was tough on the guys. They worked hard to revive her. And we
The obvious death on church.
that was again. What's the date on that one?
That was the
6th.
That was a 73-year-old female again. We were asked to do a wellness check. Granddaughter couldn't get a hold of her. When we entered the residence, she was deceased. She had been gone for a couple hours. Rigor mortis had set in for her as well.
Any other questions, comments on this?
Rusty, should we ask what the brush and grass mixture fire was at the very end of the month?
Yes. There is a vacant lot on the south end of East River, right across from Grosville Yacht Club. There's a gentleman that was in that lot, clearing that lot of the debris on the ground. He had a couple of bonfires going, and it started getting dark. He went home. The bonfires continued to burn, and there was a dead tree by one of the bonfires, and there must have been an ember that got into that tree, but there was a hollow core in that tree. That tree was on fire, and it was burning 30 feet up in the air. And it was back in an area where we couldn't readily get a fire truck back there. So we were able to put the bonfires out with shovels. I didn't want to bring a fire truck and risk damaging somebody's driveway. And it took us, I think, 6 fire extinguishers. We shot them up the tree, but we did get the tree to go out. And the tree itself was a old oak. It had a lot of widowmakers hanging down from it. My guys wanted to cut it down, and I said, no, I don't want those widowmakers to fall and skewer somebody. We're going to leave it for the professionals to come back, and when they, let the people that get paid to do that do that.
And he had a burn permit for all those, right?
Yeah, Kevin, I'll let you address that.
Right. Right. So sometimes things just happen. Yeah.
He wouldn't get a badge from Smokey the Bear.
No. We told them if you're going to have a bonfire, our burn permits state that you must be with it at all times. And we talked to him. He understands. He is cooperating now. So.
Learning experience, right?
Do you live on Groseville?
The gentleman that owns the property does.
Well, no, about the guy that-
Contractor that he hired,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. He's very familiar with Grosjean. He's done some work here, but I can't tell you for sure if he lives here or not.
Anything else? Okay. I think we've already talked about the budget. Or if you have something more, is this the next year budget?
The budget is for next year as well. You see it in front of you here. You have that. We have talked about that, yes. The next item,
We're just this year. This past year's budget. Okay.
Rusty, just after, I know you're going to have your meeting with township manager and supervisor soon with regards to your upcoming budget. Once that's completed, if you could just kind of give us an update as to what transpired and what came out of that budget hearing or meeting would be great.
Thanks. Then we can discuss.
Yeah.
questions on that?
Let's move on to carport.
Carports, our 2.5 or 2 year project is finally finished. There is a little bit left to do. There's some concrete that has to be replaced. But right now we can't get concrete trucks across the bridge because the bridge isn't rated. We finished out our contract with the contractor, and in the spring, we're going to have Compo come back and finish out the concrete that's left to be done.
Why can't they get the concrete now?
The concrete trucks can't come across the bridge because the bridge is not rated yet. We're waiting for Wayne County to give us a weight limit on the bridge, and it's unavailable for them.
What about the pay bridge though?
They won't let you take it.
Stopped all heavy trucks.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So we have that left to finish out. We don't know when when Wayne County will have their calculations done, so we can do that. And it's also, wintertime is not the most optimum time to pour concrete. So those holes, we're going to have John Kine from the DPW fill them in with rock or stone. We do have them barricaded off right now so nobody can go into that area, but once the spring gets here, we'll have Compo remove the stone, and then we'll fill the rest in with concrete. That is a 10-inch slab in that area, and the 10-inch slab is because of the heavy fire trucks. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that, Kurt?
That the project's done.
Hallelujah, we're finally happy to have it done.
Okay, well, that's great. The SCBA grant?
The SCBA grant. Our SCBAs have aged out, and our SCBAs are self-contained breathing apparatus. Those are the tanks that we wear on our back with the masks that enable us to go into a fire and fight fire. That supply that is on that tank, that's what keeps us alive, keeps our men alive while we fight that fire. Our original SCBAs were bought in the year 2000. The tanks have a lifespan of about 15 years, and our tanks, we have pushed them as far as we possibly can. February of 2022 is the last push that we can do to extend the age on those tanks. So those SCBAs have aged out at the end of this month. We knew that we were going to need some. We got fortunate in that several fire departments downriver came together. They needed SCBAs as well. And we joined together as a consortium and applied for a FEMA grant, an Assistance to Firefighters grant, to help with the cost of these SCBAs. WyanDOT was the lead agency, and WyanDOT took on the role of the lead fire department. A grant writer was hired, from what I understand. Grozil put together an SCBA team, a group of members, and we worked with the other departments downriver that to look at the different tanks and to come up with which tank worked the best. WyanDOT applied for that grant. FEMA, it takes a while for that paperwork to go through, but FEMA came back with an answer not too long ago, and they said, we will pay for a little less than half of your tanks. Grozil needs a total of 22 SCBAs, and with the money we got from FEMA, which is $81,000, we can buy 11 tanks. Those 11 tanks will help us, but we still need 11 more. So part of the deal with FEMA is they said we will pay $81,000, but Grozil has to come up with 10%, or $8,100 on their own, as well as the other fire departments downriver. That's your earnest money. That's what you have to come up with. We talked to the manufacturer who we spec'd out the tanks with, and to fill the rest of the remainder of the tanks, or the SCBAs, they're going to extend that price that we bought in bulk with all the other fire departments, so that when we buy the rest of the 11 tanks, we can get them for the same cost as what we did when we went in with all 7 fire departments to buy in bulk. Our cost for this, FEMA's gonna be 81,000. We have to pony up 8,100. The 11 additional tanks comes to 81,000, and we're upgrading all of the tanks to 45-minute tanks. The original bid spec'd out 30-minute tanks. 30-minute tanks, they last 30 minutes if you're an 18-year-old Olympic swimmer and you're sleeping. For the gentlemen we have on our fire department, we're all in our 40s, 50s. That 30-minute tank, when you're putting out quite a bit of work in a fire, dragging hose, you will never get 30 minutes out of that tank. We are upgrading all our tanks to 45-minute tanks, and that's the maximum you can upgrade to. So I think we paid about $4,000 roughly to upgrade them. It was well worth it, and in a fire, those tanks are life. Air is life. And if you get knocked down, you get disorientated in a fire, you want that 45-minute tank. You need as much time on air as you can get. So 81,000 from FEMA. The 11 for us are 85,000. The total cost to replace the SCBA's, which has to be done this year, is 166,390. FEMA's share is 72,810.80. So the overall cost for Grosjean is going to be 93,580.20. The 93 is a lot better than 166. So we were very fortunate at this time that we were able to get this grant. It just worked out good for us with the bulk pricing. The need for our tanks is immediate. We were lucky, or we were fortunate, like I said, it's a one-time opportunity that we were able to get in with all the departments downriver. And we have this in our equipment budget. So
it's covered.
it's covered.
So, Rusty, two questions. One, obviously, life is very difficult for a lot of folks. You said we have to do this by February of what year?
February of 2022.
Right, so we're in February 2022. Let's say the township, we make the recommendation today, the township board approves it on Monday. When do these come in? Are they available?
Now we're waiting on the manufacturers to supply them, and we're just waiting for them at that time. Yes, they're available, but as in everything else in the United States, supply chain has slowed down. I don't have an estimate of when they will be delivered. I called to replace some fire hose yesterday, and fire hose generally 1-2 weeks. I was told 16 to 18 weeks lead time.
So for the men and women, obviously these tanks are obsolete after a certain period of time. What happens if we don't get these units until April?
Continue using the ones that we have, and we just keep doctoring them and making them work. We have sent them out for repairs, but because they have aged out, they no longer make components for them.
So you need a motion tonight, once we get to the action item, to approve the purchase of how many units?
22 SCBA's.
For 93,580?
93,580 is our cost, correct?
Since this is within our budget, we have the money, do we need to go to the township on this?
You do. You do.
So for us, it's a recommendation to recommend to the township.
And, you know, the funds are there, and obviously that's what the dedicated millage is for equipment, but we still need them to approve the purchase.
Our motion will be to recommend it to the township.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Any further discussion? Then-
Well, and just so it is as a draft item on the agenda, so we're ready for it on Monday.
And we still have
Motion,
So moved.
support.
further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, this last item is the millage. Kurt Kowak, I'll ask you to,
Sure. You know, over the last year and a half, we've been talking about the funding for the fire department. All of our departments are tasked with trying to figure out how to live within their budget. Fire is no different. Right now, we have two methods of funding the fire department. We have a dedicated equipment budget, which we just talked about, and that's a 0.5 mil, and the last collection for that is in 2025. We also have an operating millage, which is day-to-day operations for the fire department. That's a 1.5 mil, and the last tax collection for that is December of 2023. But as we all have recognized, and I think we've gone through our financials over the last few months, we've been eating into our reserves because the collection of 1.5 mils doesn't cover the cost. If it does cover the cost, it's very tight, to the point where now we're having some concerns as to what happens once our reserves are no longer available. Obviously, Rusty's been hit with some heavy insurance increases. The men and women that serve the island receive the benefit of health care insurance. I know the township and township manager and Rusty and his officers have been working trying to figure out the best solution for insurance. But when you take a look at the funding for the fire department over the next 5 years, we're not generating enough money. And because we're not generating enough money, we need to try to figure out how to best acquire additional money so that Rusty has the ability to fund day-to-day operations. So the reason why we put this on the agenda is the fact that we know that come next year, financially, we're going to be in even more of a precarious position. And so what I'd be recommending, had the opportunity of, we've all sat down with the finance director, and then we've kind of worked on trying to figure out the best solution. It would appear that 0.75 mils would be sufficient over a 5-year period to generate enough money to keep the department moving forward, take care of their health care issues, as well as potentially getting additional men and women on this department that we need because our runs are increasing. You take a look at the financial straits. Obviously, we have other millages that are going to come in front of our residents. We have road issues, we have wastewater treatment issues, but from a public safety standpoint, we need to make sure Rusty and Kevin and the other gentlemen and women that are in this department are properly funded. So
That's their only income.
it is the only benefit they receive. And again, they've been working hard on insurance over the last few months. It's not an easy thing when it goes up 25%. Industry standards is around 15%, but you don't know, it could be 25% again next year and the next year. Obviously, everything seems to be COVID-laced in some way or shape or form. But my thought is that in order to make sure that we continue to have the best fire department in the area, we need to properly fund it. So that's why I added it to the agenda. I think it's important. I think Dallas, as a former supervisor, and myself as a former supervisor, are going to say that police and fire are key to this community. And we need to make sure they're properly funded. Now, again, this is a recommendation to the board. If the board has different thoughts on it, that's their prerogative. But I would like to see this go on the August 2022 ballot because I think this funding needs to get in the hands of the fire department so that we can properly fund it moving forward.
Kurt, as you're making this proposal, I presume you don't mean for the agenda on Monday, because I don't think we've had enough discussions. But secondly, are you recommending this 0.75 mils in addition to the existing
Correct.
millage?
Correct. It would be
Okay.
a new millage. That would be in addition to the 1.5 that is we presently are using for operating. And again, it wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, I appreciate you raising that. Potentially, if you could add it as just a discussion item so that at least we get people talking about it next week. But I agree it's not an action item for next week.
We've already broached the subject.
Right.
Chairman Jerry and Chief Russ and I and Supervisor Budney and Manager Derek Teal in working with the current rate increase of the insurance. We found some mechanisms available through COVID relief funds that enable us to get through at least a year. But we are all very aware that that is a short-term solution, that we do need to look ahead potentially for additional millage funds. So I think the subject has come up, and I think it's a good idea. We'll keep bringing it up, and we'll be ready.
Yeah.
When this board is ready to recommend, the township board will be ready to act.
Right, and that's, I mean, being prospectively looking forward, there's other items that are out there in this community that need to be taken care of. But when it comes to public safety, and you can see that you are getting the fire department through this year, but next year there's no good answer because we don't know where we're going to be next year. So this is basically allowing the residents to address it from their end. And, if we put it on the ballot, and again, I would like to see it as soon as possible, just because I think, Rusty, come next year, the reserves that we've had, those reserves won't be there any longer. And financially, that could put a crimp in him with regards to how many people he has operating and working with him in the department. So the sooner the better, and that's why I'm proposing October of 22 or August of 2022.
I would just add that it's good that we have the reserves, and the reserves are there for the time when you need them. As you know, you can't hold on to these funds indefinitely. We have to use them so that the people who contributed them actually get the use of them, right? So it's good that we have the reserves. We always want to have a certain amount in reserve, but on the current path, we're eating that up, and we won't have anything. So I think also education is going to be an important part of this discussion, education of our public, helping them understand how this volunteer department works, and that even though it's a volunteer department, it's not a free department. A lot of people think that, volunteer means low costs, and I think we need to set that record straight, and that we have a professional department, but the way it's operated is very beneficial to us. It keeps our costs down.
It keeps our fire insurance down too. because of the
Absolutely.
quality of our fire department.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is that the education is important because obviously in 2008, 2009, when the property values dropped on Grosse Ile, that 1.5 mils, it's never caught up. So as the economies have changed on scale, right now the reserves, we've eaten into our reserves, and we did a good job. Both Chief Murdoch and obviously Rusty have done a good job with the budget, but they don't have any more monies to play with come next year, end of next year, which puts him, Rusty, in a precarious spot. So we have to do something from this. I'm concerned more from the fire side. I know DPS might be concerned about their projects, and maybe Rec's worried about their project, but from a fire standpoint, public safety standpoint, to me it's a priority. And
And health insurance costs are going up. They're not going down.
yeah, they're not going down next year.
Well, it does need to be said that as residents of this township, our infrastructure is requiring help right now. And so we will be, I think you're all aware, we will be facing conversations about the roads. We will be facing conversations about healthcare and police and fire. So, but I think our residents are also, they have a certain quality of life that they're expecting, a certain standard. And I think that we're all realizing that to maintain that, we have to pay for that. And if we all share that cost, it's relatively easy.
And we can do that. I mean, obviously, the fire department does a good job of being ombudsman, every time they service anybody in a given day. We can also have some open houses and show the residents what services there are. And tonight's a good example. You're purchasing these units for $93,000. The residents have recognized the importance of making sure we have good equipment, so they're serviced. But that's why those funds are there. I think a lot of people say, boy, you're storing money. $93,000 is a large bill, but because we have a dedicated millage for equipment, we're able to do that because the founders of the township a long time ago, they created a dedicated millage to do exactly this. So,
Well, And we all realize, it was just in the paper again today that Beaumont Health donated a, Rusty, I can't remember the name of
Lucas.
a Lucas compression machine to Romulus. And again, I think it's valued at $80,000. This kind of equipment costs a lot of money. And, but it also, you can't put a price tag on the life that it saves. So we do very well by getting donations like we did last year, 2 years ago. But other things like this, we have to maintain as well as we can. And when we can't maintain it anymore, it's time to replace it. So
We got our,
very prudent.
yes, SCBA's, we definitely got our use out of them. Yes, we got our money's worth out of them.
So Jerry, if you, I don't have anything else to say under discussion as it relates to it. I don't know if we want to move on to our action items.
Well, is there any further comments or discussion? If not, the motion will be to recommend to the Township Board a ballot proposal for .75 mils for the Fire Department August 2022 ballot.
That's my so moved.
Support.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then Jerry, if we can, I think it would be helpful for Township Manager if we could put a letter together just to inform them of the recommendation that maybe you could sign, pass it along to him, and then he'll take it to where it needs to go.
Maybe
Do you have a letter that's,
We can. We'll get a letter for you tomorrow if you can.
okay,
and if it's gonna be on the agenda, let us know. We'll come and, we should attend the meeting, don't you think?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if and when it turns into an action item, that would be good to participate in that.
I'm sorry.
okay. We come to public comment. I see none of the members of the public are here tonight, so that concludes our items for today. I'll need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support. Aye.
Aye.
Aaron, thank you very much.
Our next meeting will be the